Hi, Zach Reiser here, and welcome back to another bass effects review video. Today, I am getting into a pedal that I have been incredibly curious about for a very long time, the Bliss Preamp MKII from their Automatone series. All right, I'm just going to start things off with this. That is the sexiest pedal I've ever seen in my life. I mean, we got wood side panels, a brushed stainless finish, these gorgeous arcade buttons down here at the bottom, and then, of course, the mechanical faders that slide with your presets and that also slide with your expression control. I mean, come on. That is just too ridiculous. Bliss, you've knocked it out of the park with this one in terms of aesthetics. Now, the aesthetics is not where the quality stops. The sound quality in this thing is impeccable. It has tons of sounds in there, and all of them are really studio grade. This pedal has a lot of features, and there's a lot of videos out there showing kind of the nitty-gritty of how the pedal really functions, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time diving into every little detail, but I do want to give you a rundown of just kind of what's going on the surface of the pedal. So as you saw at the beginning of the video, you do have presets. You have 3 banks of 30 presets, which you can cycle through with this foot switch or with MIDI, if that's your thing. You can also choose to set expression globally for every preset or per preset. And it's very intuitive and very easy to set expression. I'll show that later. In terms of the controls on the faders, it's kind of a pretty classic preamp setup. We have your overall output volume, your gain level, and then bass and treble, which are both just cuts, I'm pretty sure. And then this very dynamic active mid-range in the middle, which has boost and cut available, and also 3 different cues or kind of slopes on that cutoff frequency. And then to top it all off, you can add a fuzz circuit in here if you want to get really gnarly. You also have diode selections between silicone and germanium or turning them off. And then that beautiful mid-range circuit can be put pre the distortion or post. To start us off, as usual, here's my bass's dry tone Dingwall ABZ Six String on the neck pickup. So let's start on the lower gain side of things here. As you can see, I have the mid circuit turned off completely and the bass and treble are all the way up. So we're basically just kind of sending my whole signal into the pedal. And I'm just going to play with the gain and the volume to keep the output volume kind of somewhat similar. Start with my fingers and then I'll switch to a pick. So hopefully you can hear that without touching the fuzz circuit, you can get into some pretty high gain territory. And if you boost the mids into the distortion, you can get straight up crazy, squash, squishy, nasty fuzz without ever touching the fuzz circuit. So we're going to start with the mid-range control in that pre-setting. So this is running into the distortion. And if it's in the middle, you have no booster cut happening. So we're going to go full cut to start us off. And now the frequency knob, or the frequency fader, goes from a very large range. So we really go from almost low end on the bottom side to almost high end on the top side. Mid-range is kind of a loose term with how wide this thing sweeps. To make things easier on myself and also to show off a very cool feature of the pedal, we are going to set up expression on the frequency fader, and it is Super simple. So we click both switches, that gets us into expression mode. We click which fader we want to be controlled. So I have the frequency knob up, I set the toe position, and then I set the heel position and go out of expression. And now I can control that with my foot. So let's hear what these different frequency cuts sound like. Now, same exact thing here, except I'm going to switch it into post. So now the mid-range is cutting after the distortion. So now let's do a little bit of boosting with the mid-range. And I'm not going to boost it all the way because this thing I think has like 18 dB of boost, and it really starts to get kind of loud very quickly. And you'll hear that when you're boosting those really low end frequencies for a bass player, it just sounds extra beefy and grunty. And when you go up to those upper range frequencies, you start getting kind of that like pick attack snarl. Same thing, but post the distortion. So you have a very wide range of frequencies to choose from with the mid-range circuit. And we're not done yet because now we have the Q switch. So the entire time here so far, I have been in the widest Q range, which is really more of just a standard EQing mid-range style. When we go to the blue or red setting is when the mid-range circuit starts to really become more of an effect. And I would say the blue setting is kind of like a wah, and the red setting is really almost like a filter. So let's hear what some of that sounds like with this current setup. So with mids in a scooped position on the blue Q setting, to me, it's really kind of like a phaser. When you're running it pre, it's a more subtle phasing effect, and when you run it post, it's a pretty extreme phasing effect. So let's hear what that sounds like here. This particular phasing effect I think sounds pretty gnarly when you run a octaver into the preamp. So I'm running my Boss OC2 in kind of that traditional octaver setup like this. And now let's run it into this kind of phaser-ish setting on the preamp. So with the mids boosted in the blue Q setting, you get kind of a pseudo wah effect going on here. And depending on if you're running it pre or post really changes the sound, just like running a wah pedal into a distortion versus running a distortion into a wah pedal is a very different sound. So that is the blue Q setting, which I think is more wah-like or phaser-like. And now getting into the red setting is where you start getting almost into some filtering action. And I'm actually going to hold off on that because I want to talk about the fuzz circuit before we get to that particular Q setting. So the fuzz circuit has two modes. It has an open fuzz and a gated fuzz. The open fuzz is going to be more of your traditional, just like raw, nasty, gritty fuzz. The gated fuzz is more of that like super compressed, Velcro-ish style fuzz. I do find that with bass, your low ends can kind of overwhelm the fuzz circuit pretty easily, which is a very cool effect, but sometimes it gives you the perception that your low end is dropping, but what's really happening is kind of squeezing your note into a tiny, tiny, tiny little range. So you really have to play around with what gain settings work best. Also, you can boost those low, low, low mids and get some of that bass back sometimes as well. So far, I have not touched the diode button, and that's because, in my opinion, on bass in the normal gain range, in other words, no fuzz, it is a very subtle effect and not really worth the time for this video. But in the fuzz setting, you do hear a major difference in the top end of the fuzz. So I want you to just hear the difference between the silicone, germanium, and no diodes with this particular fuzz setting. So if that fuzz is a little bit too mid-range focused for you, you of course have a very interactive mids frequency control section. So let's cut some of the low mids out to get kind of that classic scoopy effect. I'll do it pre and post so you can hear the difference. And also I'm gonna play with a pick and this thing gets crazy when you hit it hard. So let's go a little bit kind of snappier, a little bit squishier, and let's switch from the open fuzz to the gated fuzz. So now that we have all this harmonic content to work with, it's time to show off the red Q setting, specifically when you are in post and you are boosting. You get a very, very convincing kind of almost like a two-pole filter sweep going on here. So I'm going to take advantage of this kind of synthy sound that we got going on here, and I'm going to run it into some lovely kind of Benson-inspired delay on my Strymon Volante for some more synth-style leads. So to show off that red Q setting into the distortion, I'm on a gated fuzz setting here. I'm boosting the crap out of the mids. I'm running the preamp into my Dimension C chorus pedal from Boss, and you get this lovely synthy sweep. Another one of my favorite sounds to run into distortions is some kind of harmonizer. So I'm going to be running a fifth from my Electro-Harmonix Hog 2 into this distortion setting. So by itself, the Hog 2 sounds like this. And the preamp by itself sounds like this. And now together. One more big sound here to finish things off. So I have kind of an organ setting from my Hog 2. It sounds like this by itself. And we're going to take that organ sound, run it into kind of a sweepable mid-range overdrive on the preamp, and then run that into some of that lovely Benson-style delay, yet again from the Strymon Volante. That is my demo of the Preamp Mark II from the Automatone series from Chase Bliss Audio. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe below. It really does help me out. And as usual, I'll be back very shortly with more demo videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.